Hey guys, we are back. We are here with our multi-battle draft guide. We promised it to you guys at the end of this last season. Now, here we are, 24 hours before the draft. We're going to drop this knowledge on you guys. And just so we give you guys an update, I'm Anthony. That's Matt.
I thought
We
I
are
was Anthony.
the reigning champs.
Oh, that's true. That part
Just
is
like the
true.
Dodgers, we brought a championship to Los Angeles. It's not it's not as big of a deal, obviously, as our championship, but good on them. Great job. Great job,
We'll
guys.
give him some credit, I
Yeah, some,
guess.
yeah, definitely. I wanted to rep the smaller guys a little bit. But yes, we are here with our multi-battle draft guide. We compiled basically our entire process of how we like to draft stuff. We took some tips from some other champions in this league, and we basically made it into a nice, concise way that can lead you into creating a nice draft that can get a really good grade on our draft scores. And maybe make you feel a little bit less lost if you're new to drafting in a Pokemon style league like this where you have a budget and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna break this down into four sections, um, starting with it is gonna be
The
the
tiers explained.
yeah we're gonna go through what exactly the tiers are, what you should expect from them. We're gonna go through a concept that we call best Pokemon available. That'll be more a little bit more your thing. Uh, then we're gonna go through budgeting your points, which is pretty big, and I think something that people don't quite think about enough. And then we're gonna talk about essentially building a cohesive squad on your draft.
Yep.
Sort of the beginnings of your team building. So anything else to say before we get started?
Let's get into it, man.
Okay, let's jump in. So, we're gonna start off kind of going over each individual tier, kind of explaining what really to expect from them and the kinds of things that they're gonna do for you on your draft. So to kick us off, we've got the two highest tiers here. U tier costing 140 points, and S tiers costing 90 points. So U tiers are really interesting. We had a few U tiers back in season 3. We're going into season 5 now. Back in season 3, we had Melmetal get picked. We had Reshiram get picked. Maybe we had a couple of Solgalios because
Yes,
Solgaleo
those Sogalios got picked up.
was legal. We had two different drafts at the time because the pool of Pokemon was a lot
Oh, yeah.
smaller. This was before Crown Tundra and before Isle of Armor as well. Um, so yeah, U tiers are and then last season we didn't have
None.
any get
No
picked.
U-tiers got picked last season.
I think there were only like 5 of them that were actually there. But now with Crown Tundra, we have a more robust U tier. There were a couple of U tiers from last time, like the Marshadow that were banned before and are now not. So U tiers essentially are going to be your highest BST Pokemon. They're going to have the biggest base stat totals. If you're looking for something with just insane amounts of stats, U tier is where you're going to want to look first. It's gonna contain a lot of these GS Cup restricted Pokemon like Dialga and Giratina and Kyurem, Palkia, Rayquaza, Zygarde, Zamazenta, stuff like that. Not all of the GS Cup restricted Pokemon are going to be in here. Stuff like Xerneas, Groudon, Kyogre. I think both of the Kyurem fusions are banned. Lunala, Solgaleo are banned. Yveltal is banned. So you're not going to find everything in there, but there's a lot of really powerful stuff here. So you're also gonna get some kind of combination of a powerful ability and or unique signature moves. Not a lot of these Pokemon have that kind of powerful ability, but damn, there are some that do. Like the Ho-Oh and Lugia, especially, I think are have some pretty powerful abilities that are not really they're not signature abilities. They you'll find them in the rest of the pool. The multi scale on Lugia and the regenerator on Ho-Oh. I think those are some of the most interesting abilities on these Pokemon. And because you can't Dynamax, I think Ho-Oh's regenerator is going to be it could be pretty big. Multi-scale on a Pokemon with a BST like these are is just kind of insane. You've got Airlock on Rayquaza. I think countering weather can be one of the more difficult things to do in a draft setting when you're going up against it, and having a Pokemon with stats like Rayquaza just sitting on the field canceling weather is pretty huge. You've got Zygarde Complete, which has an insane ability. Even though it can't Dynamax, it's incredibly bulky, and if you just let that thing get set up and allow it to transform, it can be an absolute monster. Zamazenta, I think, actually maybe one of the best U tiers on here. It just gets an instant +1 defense on entering the field. You can even slap an assault vest on it to get +1 in both areas, and I think it has good enough coverage to justify an assault vest. You can put a lot of different stuff on it. And then some of these signature moves are like Marshadow Spectral Thief is absolutely insane, especially in a Dynamax format when your opponents are going for Max Knuckles and Max Quakes, Max Airstreams and all that stuff, and if your Marshadow gets one Spectral Thief off, I think you steal all of the stats even before you attack. So that's pretty crazy. Melmetal's Double Iron Bash. If you get that thing in Trick Room, it's super slow. It has 30% flinch chances in one move. Zygarde's Thousand Arrows and Thousand Waves are good pretty moves, yeah. Those are extremely good. Hitting flying types or trapping your opponents in. You have the option for both depending on whether you need to hit flying types or levitate Pokemon on the other side of the field. Ho-Oh's Sacred Fire, 50% burn chance is insane. So a lot of these just have they have a lot of interesting things that and powerful things that Pokemon in these on the rest of the board don't exactly have access to. The main drawback here is that U tier Pokemon cannot Dynamax. This was determined the first time we played multi battles in Generation 8. We decided that we all took a vote and decided that U tiers were not allowed to Dynamax, and we've held on to that since. And I think maybe that sort of played a role in people not picking U tiers last time, because they saw the limitations of that. But I think now that we have some of the previously banned U tiers back in play, and now that we have a lot of these new big legendary Pokemon out of the Crown Tundra, I expect U tiers to be much more viable than they were last season. There's also Jirachi, which is insane. You get Follow Me, and you get Serene Grace, Iron Head with base 100s across the board. Yeah, there is some seriously good Pokemon in here that don't even necessarily need to Dynamax. So the only thing about a U tier is that because it costs so much, you need to it's gonna sort of limit what you're able to pick for the rest of the draft. You can still pick from some of these top tiers. We'll get into some sample draft breakdowns for in case you want to draft a U tier a little bit later. But a U tier is really gonna need a solid supporting cast, which is why we kind of think that maybe drafting a U tier late in the draft, maybe even for your last pick, may be optimal, especially if there are fewer teams that seem to be going for a U tier. If you plan out your draft to allow space for a U tier, and you start drafting some of the best Pokemon from A and B tier and stuff like that, maybe even S if you want to go that top heavy. I think a taking the best stuff out of there and then going back and grabbing your U tier later is might actually be a really viable strategy for a really solid draft. So because you can get those solid teammates and then still go back and pick up that U tier if you that you want. You might have to sort of build out your team in a way that allows you to pick like 2 or 3 different U tiers. But you might not even need to do that if there's not a lot of people going for them. So,
Yeah.
anything more to say on the U tier?
Just kind of add a little bit to that last point of waiting a little bit. I think a lot of these U tiers are very good, but they're so close together in like, you know, none of them really separate from themselves from the pack from other U tiers. They're very like ranked pretty close. They're interchangeable as far as rankings go. You mentioned a couple that might be some of the more popular ones like Zamazenta or like maybe even Marshadow, which got unbanned. Ho-Oh Lugia, I'm thinking might get picked up as well. We know Alyssa loves Dialga. That's probably going to be taken too.
True, yeah.
But honestly, I mean, I think that if you go, oh, we really wanted Ho-Oh, but somebody picked it up. Picking up Reshiram, if you already have a solid team, it could be, it fills a fire type role. There's just when you have that solid team, the U tier is almost the frosting instead of the cake.
Right.
And you kind of can see like one of the main ones that we like to look at is the New England Patriots from 2 years or 2 seasons back.
Yeah.
They had a Reshiram, but the Reshiram was like it was like an add-on. The whole team was so solid that they could beat you with the other Pokemon on their team, and then you also had to worry about Reshiram. We really
Right.
think that that's probably the way that you want to take things.
Yeah, and I think if you're if you're drafting for a U tier style team, I think if you do it properly, you might realize a little bit later that that's kind of what you ended up doing. You might think that like your U tier is going to be everything, and maybe the rest of your team is going to kind of seem lackluster. If you do it right, I think you're probably going to have that supporting cast first, and you're going to be looking at it going, "Damn, this is really really solid," and then I get to put a U tier on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's actually seriously a lot of potential for that, especially if you go for a late draft U tier pick. But not to say that an early draft U tier pick is bad, especially if there's one that you want to build around, which might be a little bit difficult because, like you said, it's hard to see which ones separate from the pack, if any. But the more that I'm looking at this list, I actually think that I'm liking Zamazenta more and more.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's in my mind at least that's one that's really starting to separate from the pack. Its stats are very good. You don't get the crowned form, just to be clear. If anyone was not clear on that, this is just the pure fighting type form, but you still get the +1 defense ability. And you can put any item you want on it. You're not locked into the crown shield or the rusty shield since that item's not allowed on it anyway. So, but yeah, I think that's about it from me on the U tiers.
Yeah. So let's jump into S tiers. In my opinion, probably probably the most sought after tier that you're gonna see in the first round. Most S tiers are gonna be I don't want to say gone, but picked up during the first couple of rounds. So because of that, they're often the backbone or the core on your team. They typically have a combination of the high BSTs, the high base stat totals, very good move pools, and very powerful abilities. When we were talking about this, I was telling Matt that I feel that Landorus Therian is like the quintessential S tier. It's right in the middle of the pack. There are other S tiers that are better than it, but you can't put it anywhere else because of its amazing stats, good typing, great ability, and really good move pool. You have to have it in S tier. So there's going to be a lot of Pokemon like that just do multiple things and are probably going to be some of the main Pokemon that you like to build around. and obviously because the U tiers aren't allowed to Dynamax, these are going to be some of the best decisions or best Pokemon that you have to make a Dynamax Pokemon because just to stay on the Landorus thing, when you Dynamax that and you're launching these max Airstream from a Pokemon that has such a high base stat total, you're getting boosts on top of it, and then you're also threatening the team with some of the other Pokemon that you have. You put yourself in a really fantastic position. And one of the things that we saw definitely was that S tiers, were very, very, very popular to Dynamax, especially at the beginning of the year because
Yeah.
it's like almost a comfort level, especially with us that come from VGC.
Mm-hmm.
We we've played with a lot of these S tiers, multiple of them on the same team because you want to get the best Pokemon on your team. So because of that, it adds a little bit of a comfort factor because you may have ran Kartana, you may have ran Tapu Fini, you may have ran uh, Landorus or any of these other S tiers. So it makes it a little bit easier. But these are fantastic Pokemon. Um, I would definitely recommend that you have, if you don't have a U tier, put an S tier on there. It's definitely going to help you out because these are some of the best Pokemon that you are able to get.
But at the same time, neither of these tiers is a requirement. I mean, we did win this last season without a U or an S.
Yeah.
We'll get to that as well. But I think I wanted to touch on this second point a little bit more. That typically what you're going to see from these S tiers is a combination of high BST, a deep move pool, and a powerful ability. You can see that with a lot of the a lot of the Pokemon that are really strong coming out of VGC, like a lot of the pretty much every Ultra Beast, I think. Well, maybe not every Ultra Beast because some of them are in A and B tier, but a lot of these S tier Ultra Beasts like Kartana. Kartana's got insane stats like 181 base attack and it's 109 base speed, and it's got a lot of coverage. It's you could even put Swords Dance on it if you're crazy enough. It has a lot of item options. It has an amazing ability in Beast Boost. Like you were talking about Landorus T. Landorus T has a surprising amount of coverage. Intimidate is just an incredibly solid ability. It's got very, very good stats. It's a common trend you're going to see among these S tiers, but we did talk about some notable exceptions to this rule. Um, some of them being like Porygon 2 and Dusclops, I think are pretty notable exceptions because they're not they they don't exactly have the same kind of power and sweeping potential. They might not have the same stats or powerful abilities the same way that Beast Boost is. But I mean, Frisk is still pretty good. But it's Pokemon like that, and Pokemon I think like Indeedee and Amoonguss, they're more in S tier because their ability to do one particular thing extremely well is just too good for any of the lower tiers. Um, Indeedee is arguably the best redirector in the game, or the best Pokemon at redirecting. I guess I should say. Um, Amoonguss is insane with Rage Powder and Spore, and even stuff like Gmax Lapras is also up here, which its stats are not super amazing. Its move pool can be kind of predictable, but the Gmax Resonance is just, I mean, it's got to be the best Gmax move in the game.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that it's just way too good to put down in a lower tier. And then Whimsicott as well, I think, is just so good at being a support Pokemon that you can't put it down lower. And even something like Mew. Mew is it's lacking a powerful ability. Synchronize is fine. It's not amazing. But it's one of these Pokemon that doesn't actually have all three of these. It's more like it's more in the deep move pool and high BST camp. But it's so I think Victini actually counts for this too. Its move pool is so deep that it makes it powerful enough that it belongs in the S tier. Mew for obvious reasons, and and Victini as well. I
Yeah,
think
Victini
Victini's
is
got.
decent move.
I've actually been looking at it. It's kind of insane. So this is kind of a general thing that you're going to see from S tiers, but as we've mentioned, it's not exactly this trifecta of S tier strength is not exactly something that's going to apply to every single one. It's more just a general rule that you're going to see throughout this tier.
Yeah. So, I mean, that pretty much wraps up S tier. Just to kind of go back on it a little bit. These are going to be some of the more sought after Pokemon that you're going to see. Expect a lot of S tiers taken in the first 10 picks, just because they're, they are so good and versatile and can do so many things very well. So, definitely when you're filling out your team, take a look at some of these S tiers and mark them down and see which ones you like and see if you can draft them on your team.
All right, moving on. We've got the A tier. A tiers are typically they're not gonna be they're not usually gonna be the one big backbone of your team the way that a lot of S tiers kind of expect to function on your draft. A tiers are a little bit more like they're very very good at filling specific roles. If you're looking for if you're thinking to yourself, well, I need a Pokemon that does this kind of thing. I need a powerful flying type sweeper, or I need a really really solid fire type, or your A tier is probably where you're gonna find the most solid Pokemon for those kinds of roles at the most reasonable price. And at the same time, a lot of the Pokemon in A tier, not all of them, but a lot of them can end up switching between different roles. We ended up doing that a lot on our draft from last season. We used a couple different kinds of Blastoises. We used Shell Smash only twice really. It was more of a follow me user. But Shell Smash, both times we used it was super clutch. It was able to offer us more than just being a supportive, bulky follow me kind of Pokemon. Then we had our Grimmsnarl, which frankly we ran offensively more often than we ran as a support Pokemon. In VGC you're thinking Grimmsnarl, okay, well it's got screens and it's gonna Thunder Wave me and Fake Tears me and trick a full incense or an eject button on me. We we didn't do as much of that as a lot of people expected. It's a lot of the Pokemon in A tier kind of have some weirder modes that you might not see in VGC, so you need to be aware of what they can the totality of what they can actually do. Because people, like when we Dynamaxed the Grimmsnarl, people were consistently
Time.
surprised, and it was the right decision every time. So but just looking at the A tier here, you've also got just to give a few more examples of Pokemon that can kind of switch roles. I think Galarian Articuno can sort of this isn't a total switching of roles, but you can swap between a Tailwind user and a Trick Room user for Galarian Articuno. So depending on what your team needs, Articuno can kind of fill in that kind of speed control. Something like a Corviknight you could actually use for if you want to use like bulk up and you want to be a big Dynamax sweeper with max airstream going real fast, you can do that. You can have you can use Iron Defense and Body Press and Roost, that kind of a set. If you just want to bulk it out and be really annoying and have that kind of a win con, maybe take your opponent to timer like that. Let's see what else. Volcarona is actually another one that we used last season a couple of different ways.
Gyarados too.
Yeah, Garrett, you're a Gyarados guy. Why don't you tell us about Gyarados?
I think Gyarados is nice because you can run several different modes on it. Obviously, it has Intimidate, it has Moxie, so you can Dynamax it, start rolling. But some of the things that people don't know is like it gets access to stuff like Thunder Wave.
Yep.
It can be ran in like a supportive set to where like you use it as a defensive pivot. You know, bringing in the Intimidates, lowering the speed of certain things. Um, so you know, just having that ability to go like, are we gonna lead with the Moxie Gyarados and pick up a quick KO, and then now all of a sudden you just lose because I max Airstream, picked up the KO, and I'm at +1/+1 with a redirector next to me. It's like, okay, you know, or we start swapping in Intimidate, start lowering your attack, and it's okay, now we have a different issue. So I think stuff like that can be pretty good as well.
Yeah, I think Salamence falls into that same camp. I
Salamence
mean,
as well,
it
yeah.
has the same pair of abilities. It's not it's going to be a little bit different supportively, but it does have access to Tailwind through transfer moves, so you can use a bulky Intimidate Tailwind set, something like that. So yeah, there's A tier is going to be I guess after I'm not sure whether I would say A tier or S tier has the Pokemon with more ability to switch between roles. I would sort of venture to say it's more A tier than S tier, but I suppose that's debatable. But it's something that we've sort of identified as a an essential part of the A tier that a lot of Pokemon can sort of switch between different roles. I think Celebi can actually do that kind of well. It's with base 100s across the board. It actually has a decent physical and special move pool, and I'm pretty sure it gets both Swords Dance and Nasty Plot. No, I don't think I've ever seen somebody pick Celebi in this league, which is kind of surprising. It's unfortunate that it does have that 4x weakness, but it's only Bug.
We had Meloetta drafted before we had Celebi drafted.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, too bad. Meloetta's not in the game, so pick Celebi. And the last the last sort of hallmark of these A tiers that we identified was that a lot of them are gonna possess 2 out of 3 of these major S tier strengths that we touched on just a moment ago: the high BST, the deep move pool, or the powerful ability. A lot of them are going to have access to 2 out of 3 of those. Sometimes they're going to have more. They're going to be closer to having all 3 of those than 2. I think there are a few Pokemon on the A tier list that sort of you can actually make a decent case for putting them in the S tier. But there may be a little bit lackluster on one or two of those areas, just comparatively to some of these S tiers. I think the Galarian birds in A tier, Articuno and Zapdos, are sort of fall into that camp. I think Articuno's move pool is kind of meh, so I guess it more just relies on that high BST and powerful ability. I think Zapdos is one that fits more as a something with all 3 of these, but it doesn't quite do as well with all 3 of these strengths as much as a lot of the S tiers do.
Yeah, I agree with that. Not much to add more to the A tier, honestly. Our favorite tier, obviously. We think that, seriously, as much as we love the S tier, there's some really good hidden gems in A tier that, like Matt said, like they probably should be in S tier, but they just don't. Like Galarian Zapdos is a great example because it's one of those Pokemon that, in theory, it should be an S tier Pokemon, but when you see it in practice, it just doesn't do the types of things that you want your S tier to do. So might be interesting to see if a team picks it up and really does well with it, forces us to put it into S tier next year. But there are going to be some Pokemon like that where you're going to see and you're going to go, this probably should be an S tier. You know, probably pick that up. And because A tier just has such a great amount of Pokemon with such incredible potential. So definitely don't sleep on any of these A tiers. You can get some really, really good teammates out of this particular tier if you know where to look. For B tier, also some pretty decent Pokemon here. This one though, you're looking at more or less just role fillers. Not gonna have so much versatility as some of the other tiers, especially in S and A. But But these are good role fillers. Not to be taken lightly. These are some of the ones that like we were able to get on our team. When we say like things like Slow King, things like I don't believe it was Gorgeist, but I believe Pincurchin was on there. Noivern, I believe, is a B tier. Just there are so many good Pokemon in this particular tier that fill a role and fill it very very well. So even though you're not gonna be able to change the sets on a week to week basis, I don't know if you really want to. I just want to take a look here because I wanted to see if yeah, Tangela and Tangrowth are in B tier. So the reason why I brought those up particularly is because uh, yes, they're mostly redirectors. You know, we're not going to say that they're not, but they're really good redirectors that
Mm-hmm.
any team would love to have. I believe Tangela was on the Talonflames last year. They used it
Yep.
fantastically. Tangrowth was on
New Wave.
the New Wave, and you know they used it pretty good too. Honestly, it was a decent add for their team. So B tiers are good Pokemon that are going to fill roles. This is the tier where you really want to go in and you go, okay, we need a trick room mode. Okay, well, where do we find the trick room users? Where do we find the trick room sweepers? You're gonna find stuff like that in B tier because when I say trick room is because usually trick room sweepers are that's what they are. They're trick room sweepers. They don't have a high enough speed stat to operate outside a trick room, and you really want them to be in trick room so that way they can move first. So you know they fill that specific role. You're gonna have a lot of situations like this where it's like, oh, you know, yeah, this Crobat here, you know, it fills a particular role. It's a fast Tailwind user. It has
Yeah.
haze. It has, you know, so this is really where when you get down later into your draft, you start analyzing things, and you go like, okay, we have the fire water type. We need a grass type now. You're gonna probably be able to find a solid grass type in B tier, or if you have fairy steel and you need a dragon, you know, you're probably gonna find a decent dragon in this tier. It's probably not going to be able to do as much as a lot of these other ones, but I believe Haxorus is in B tier right now. Is that
I
right?
think it got voted into
Yeah.
B tier. Yeah.
I mean, you know, stuff like Haxorus where it's like, oh, I need a really strong dragon. Haxorus with its amazing attack stat,
Yeah.
decent speed, like you add Dynamax into it, has really good coverage. It could be a really solid, you know, solid Pokemon on your team that can't be slept on. So,
It's also where you're gonna find a lot of the like solid prankster Pokemon,
mm-hmm.
like stuff like Sableye and Meowstic and Liepard. You're gonna find them in here. A lot of the solid redirectors, like you mentioned, Tangela and Tangrowth. They're both in this tier. This is where you're gonna find the Electabuzz and Electivire and Magmar and Magmortar and Kanto, Mr. Mime. It's where you're going to find a lot of your solid Trick Room setters as well. This is where we got Slowking last time. You'll find other really solid Trick Room setters like Aromatisse and Musharna and Runerigus, stuff like
Mimikyu, I
that.
believe, is B tier now.
Yeah,
So,
Mimikyu is now a B
yeah.
tier in this season. So it's a lot of I need a solid Pokemon to fill this particular role. You're probably going to find something usable for that
Mm-hmm.
in B tier. Tailwind users too. There's plenty of decent flying types here.
Mm-hmm.
So anything like that is you're going to find something good in B tier.
Exactly. And the main thing is that like we put in the second bullet here, versatility and ability to switch roles. You're not really gonna find that very much. You're gonna draft a Pokemon. It's gonna be what it is, but that's okay. It's not that big of a deal.
For the most part, there's going to be some
Yeah.
versatility, but yeah, mostly it's rare.
Yeah.
Versatility is rare here.
And then may possess two of the three S tier strengths, but whereas A tier, I felt they have two of the three. The third one is just average. Typically, you'll have a very glaring weakness on these B tiers. They might have a couple of times four weaknesses. They might be checked by very common types in the game. Their ability may not be very good. Their move pool may be very shallow to where like you're basically only running four moves. We have Pokemon like that legitimately only have four moves that they can run in these B tiers. They're good moves, but you're not gonna see when they come out. Your opponent's gonna know exactly what you're trying to do.
Yeah, like one actually we were talking about is Buzzwole.
Hmm.
Buzzwole's a very powerful Pokemon, but having a 4 times weakness to probably the most common max move is pretty rough. And its stats, some of its stats are a little bit weird. It does have really good coverage. It has a really good ability, but the special defense stat is just unfortunate, and the speed is okay, but it's an awkward speed
Yeah.
stat. Just looking at the B tier here, I think Aurorus is kind of an interesting B tier. It is a weather setter, and it does have kind of a surprisingly deep move pool, but its its stats are not much to write home about, and the rock and ice typing is uh, arguably the worst defensive typing in the game.
Yeah.
It's bad, dude. It's bad. So you're gonna find some stuff like that. If they've got if they've got one or two big strengths, they're probably gonna have some kind of serious
Yeah.
drawback. I think Crobat sort of fits that as well. It's a really good utility Pokemon. It's very fast. Inner Focus is excellent. It just nullifies Fake Out, especially if you're Dynamaxing the thing next to it. And but it's just that's utility is what it does. It's very hard for you to use Crobat offensively. Just you can slap a Brave Bird on it sometimes, but it's not going to be doing a whole lot of damage. And
Now you're gonna still want taunt. You're gonna want haze. You're gonna want tailwind.
yeah,
You know.
it's hard to find room for it, even if you do want to be a little bit more offensive with it, or at least give it an option to damage something. But yeah, you're gonna find some stuff like that, even if they seem really strong at one particular in one or two particular areas. There's gonna be some kind of drawback. There's gonna be some kind of glaring weakness. Same can be said for like a lot of the prankster Pokemon. They're like Crobat, a lot of utility, not a lot of offense.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I think that pretty much covers B tier, right?
Yep.
All right, now we're gonna fly through these. C tier we're gonna hit on a little bit, but we really wanted to get in pretty much from S or from U all the way to B because those are gonna be really important Pokemon. But in the C tier, there's still good stuff in C tier. We don't want to just completely say that nothing's in C tier. You're gonna find very niche type role fillers here. Just when we say that, there are probably other Pokemon that can do the job better in some of these other tiers, and you probably don't want this to be your primary role setter. So if you have a Trick Room mode, and you picked up your Trick Room user in B tier, if you went and got like a Mimikyu or something, and you're looking around and you're like, yeah, let's get another Trick Room user just in case they hard check for a Mimikyu. This C tier is where that's where we picked up Gorgeist. So stuff like Pokemon like
No, Gourgeist is B.
Oh, Gorgeist. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I believe who was it that picked up not Aromatisse, the pre-evolution of Aromatisse?
Spritzy.
Stuff like that. I mean, it doesn't get Trick Room. It gets like after you and stuff like that.
No, I think it does get Trick. It's a D tier though.
Yeah. But this is where you're gonna have backup role fillers. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is they're gonna be Pokemon that maybe are not the primary role filler on your team, but they're good backups just in case. Really don't have that high of a BST. A lot of these Pokemon, if they do have a high BST, then there's something really wrong with them. So
like Regice?
Yeah. Yes, like
Yeah.
Regice. If you have a Pokemon that has like over 500 BST, but it's in C tier, then there's a reason for that. Either it doesn't have a good move pool, it just doesn't serve any purpose on anybody's team beyond just having a high BST.
Yeah.
So really what you want to look for in C tier is not so much like the BSTs as much as you are looking for like solid roles that you're looking to fill on the team.
Yeah, and C tier is also where you're gonna find the cheapest redirectors. You got stuff like Pichu and Togepi in here. So if you're like desperate for a Follow Me user, you could do that. Let's see.
Is Wartortle in C or is it in B?
Wartortle and Squirtle are both in C.
See, those are good C tier picks because War Turtle you can throw the Eviolite on.
Yeah. I generally you're gonna want obviously you're gonna want War Turtle over Squirtle. They're just they're in the same tier because we're not letting anybody pick up Follow Me for less than a C tier slot.
Yeah.
So, but War Turtle's probably not good enough to put up into B. So, I think an example of some kind of a mediocre role filler that we tried in season 3 was we were really looking for like a solid fighting type on our team, especially because we had Mew. And we were kind of struggling to find one that was left, and we were, our draft was filling up with a lot of the stuff we wanted, and we ended up picking Sock, which was okay. I don't think it ever really did much. I think we ended up trading it away, but
we had plans for it.
yeah, we did bring it at least to one match. I don't think it hit the field.
I believe against the Dedanes,
right.
They had Weavile or Sneasel.
Sneasel, yeah.
And we had double kick.
We had Scarf double kick.
Yeah, just so we can
with inner focus, which is still good.
Yeah,
we were also looking at Hitmontop for that. So, yeah. So I think that's a good example of a more mediocre kind of role filler. But there are some gems in here, I think. So it's not like everything in here is going to be lackluster and just sort of meh. But I think you'll probably find that some of these C tiers, if you're looking at a C tier and you're like, oh man, that one looks awesome. It's likely that like you might be right, but it's also fairly reasonable to expect that the thing you're looking at, the thing you want to pick, is maybe not going to be as good as you think it is.
Yeah. So that pretty much, I think, covers C tier. I mean, the only thing we kind of need to hit on, I guess, is requires heavy support in order to shine. But I feel that we don't really need to say that.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's a little bit obvious with.
I mean, your Appleton
down here.
Your Appleton is not going to sweep unless you support it.
Yeah.
And even then, it's gonna be very it's not gonna shine as bright as you expect it to. But ultimately, having a C tier come in, do run, roll, and get knocked out so you can get the momentum in your favor could win you the game. Having this little trick room user redirecting and setting up trick room and then bringing in your sweeper, that C tier just won you the game right there. So as much as we are kind of harping on some of the abilities and all these are still good role fillers that you can probably bring on your team on a week-to-week basis, if not bluff them to where you can at least threaten this particular type of mode. So I do think that while we are kind of going a little bit hard on the C tiers here, they shouldn't be slept on. You're going to need them on your team, and they are going to be able to fill particular roles. So when you're looking through them, do your best to try and pick the best one that's going to fit your team, because they are no joke.
Yeah.
And then
moving on to D tier.
Take E tier too.
Yeah, E tier we can kind of just fly by that one. It's just D and E tier can they can sort of be squished into the same thing. D tiers are obviously a little bit more useful. They actually have a chance at hitting the field. If there's any Pokemon in these tiers that actually can be useful for something, it's in D tier. E tier is essentially where we put all the Pokemon that just kind of can't do anything. They're just designed to allow for a more top-heavy draft by allowing you to spend fewer points on a pair of slots down at the bottom. So D tier, they're gonna be sort of your like backup role fillers, or if your C tiers are backup, they're gonna be kind of the backup for the backup. Any Pokemon that has any kind of usefulness is going to be down here in D tier. You might look at some of these Pokemon and wonder, what the hell can that thing even do? But a lot of this is like middle evolutions, stuff like Charmeleon or like Gabite or something like that. Any Pokemon that has most not fully evolved Pokemon with weather abusing abilities are down here. Stuff like Execute is kind of just here because it has access to chlorophyll and sleep powder. You have stuff like Ghastly and Abra, which actually have kind of surprising speed and special attack stats for being a first form Pokemon. So it's hard to put them. It's hard to give them up for 5 points. You got like Grookey, which has the Fake Out and the Grassy Glide and the Grassy Surge. Impidimp, which is probably your cheapest prankster user. We had Munchlax last season, which was budget Snorlax, obviously, but it was maybe a little bit harder to use than we thought. It's still it hit the field once, but that's kind of
Man, did we try to build for it though? And
we tried.
Yeah.
We tried. It just didn't work a lot of the time, and I think your D tier hitting the field once is maybe twice is probably what you should expect. They typically won't see a lot of play, and a lot of the time the role that it fills is probably better filled by a different Pokemon on your team, or even a couple of different ones on your team. So mostly these are just here to fill out the rest of your draft when you don't have a lot of points left. That's especially true for E tier. That's really the only thing E tier is for. If you're bringing an E tier to your battle, you either did something wrong or you're trying to meme, which we did see this last season.
I mean, nothing wrong with trying to meme, but don't tell me you're playing optimally if
Yeah.
you're gonna bring an E tier. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
You're not gonna bring Kabuto to a team, and I'm gonna be like, oh, gotta watch out for that Kabuto.
Yeah. For sure, yeah. All right, so that does it for our tiers. Moving on, our next section is about BPA, the best Pokemon available. This is going to be about optimizing your Pokemon selection in each round. So go ahead and take it away for us.
Yeah. So when you're looking at BPA, there's a couple of things that you wanna do first. The first thing you want to do is you want to take a look and you want to make a list of 5 Pokemon that you're looking to draft.
Approximately 5.
Yeah.
It's 5 is not a hard and fast
No.
rule.
What me and Matt usually do is I'll bring a Pokemon in, he'll bring a Pokemon in, or we'll bring 2 each in, and then there's kind of one that's in the middle that like both of us are looking at that we're willing to bring in that kind of fills out as like a tiebreaker. We'll discuss these a lot, go through and just kind of use different resources such as Cerebi, Picolytics, going through damage calc, seeing what they can pick up. And then what we do is we'll rank them according to how we see fit. So we take these 5 Pokemon just to go over again. You look at all of them, you take a look at everything, you determine on what kind of legitimate sets you can run. One of the examples that I was using with Matt is in the draft league where he recently drafted Tornadus, and not to give up too much on it, but Tornadus has a great move pool, a fantastic move pool. And
2 amazing abilities.
And two amazing abilities. But one thing that Matt was saying is that even though he looked through, almost all of his sets are containing Tailwind. So that's 1 out of 3 moves that you're having. So in reality, if you want to put a stab move plus Tailwind and Protect, your sets really aren't going to vary that much, even if you have such a wide variety. More what you're looking at is like something like Blastoise, where you can bring a Helping Hand, Follow Me, Fake Out, and Flip Turn set 1 week, and then bring a Shell Smash with Water Spout, with Focus Blast, and Protect the next week. And just run it off of that, and those are 2 completely different sets. They're not sharing the same moves at all. So those, even though you look through Cerebi and you go, oh, it gets this move, oh, it gets this move, can you actually put it on a set? Is there an actual set that you can run? Grimmsnarl was another great one that we had, where obviously you can do the prankster stuff with fake tears, and you can do the prankster stuff with Thunder Wave and Scary Face and tricking things. But what about prankster bulk up? What, get that prankster bulk up, get to +1/+1, and then the next turn you start launching these attacks where Grimmsnarl has a base 120 attack stat and
with
really good
amazing coverage.
Yeah, so that's a legit set that you can run. That's not going to have fake tears. That's not going to have Thunder Wave. That's not going to have a lot of these things that you typically expect to see in Grimmsnarl. So when you're looking at these other, when these sources to analyze these Pokemon, look at legitimately how many different sets you can run, and then value them based on those sets. There's a set that's not very good. Okay, it can run 3 sets, but 2 of them are crappy. That means that you're only going to really use 1 set. So you need to value that accordingly as well. Um, but once you do that, you're going to essentially have 3 or 4 backup picks to the number one that you have. And what we have here is a couple of tips from our champions. We have Yue for our season 3 champion coming in and telling us that when you're looking through these tiers, look at Pokemon that you feel that do deserve to be in a tier maybe above. If maybe how we were talking about A tiers that maybe belong in S tier, but we just couldn't really justify throwing them in S tier. Well, punish the league, for making that mistake and putting this in A tier and allowing you to grab it. Cleffy was able to grab Caparaja in C tier.
Well, the Caparaja was one that
Yeah.
Yue referenced specifically because they actually had the G-Max form on their team that same season when both of them were in C tier.
Yeah.
So that was, I think that was a great pickup for a Pokemon that was clearly worth more than what it was costing. So I think that's a great thing to identify when you're making a list of like what's optimal to pick up. And then just part of the reason we say make a list of a few different Pokemon, approximately 5, give or take, is because you need to. This is something Fiona stressed when I talked to her in preparation for this video. You gotta have backup picks in case you get sniped. It's a real rookie move to get sniped and then go, oh man, well now I don't know what to take. Don't be in that position. Don't do that. You got to have a few on your list, and sometimes that means picking a few Pokemon that fill kind of a similar role.
Mm-hmm.
At one point during the draft in season 4, we were really looking for a grass type, and I had my eye on Serena, and then basically as soon as we started talking about Serena, Ryan and Fiona snatched it, and we were like, well, I guess we got to move down to Gourgeist because we had already talked about a few grass types, and Gourgeist was next down on our list, which we ended up getting, and thank God for that.
So we cried, but we sent the pick in right away. So I think that's a key thing too. We weren't left stranded and just looking for the next thing. It's like, okay, that really sucks, but now we go with Gourgeist. And I think another thing when you're analyzing BPA is you start to realize, like, one of the things to just kind of go back to what we did in season 4 is you're looking for like a trick room user, and you go, okay, we want a trick room user, so you make a list of the 5 trick room users, and you do the pros and cons, and Slowking is at the top of your list, and Gourgeist is the next one down. Slowking gets taken, and you're like, man, but we're really missing that water type. Okay. Well, were you looking for a trick room user or were you looking for a water type? Going through this top thought process allowed you to open up a little bit and go, oh, okay, in our draft we're actually missing a water. It's a little bit more important than a trick room user right now. So maybe I should reorganize my priorities and come up with something a little bit different. Because when you get sniped and that Slowking's gone, and now you're left and you're like, oh, well, now I have a grass type trick room user instead of that water typing was really nice. Oh, okay. Now you're noticing things because you're not gonna go just pick it up right away. You're gonna go, okay, now I got to re-look through this because my head wasn't initially in this right spot. So that really helps you a lot with kind of determining what roles you're actually trying to fill, because I feel that me and Matt talked about this. A lot of these drafts towards the middle and the end became very stream of consciousness. Well, we're gonna grab that because that's the first thing that we thought of, and we just really haven't found a reason to get rid of it. When really, you should be analyzing these Pokemon, looking at them completely. We did a lot of interviews with people, and we're like, "Oh, hey, you're running this, are you planning to do this, this, and this?" And they're like, "We didn't even look at the Cerebi page. We had no idea it does any of that." Oh, okay, you should do that when you're drafting. When any Pokemon that you have on your team, you should have looked at.
Yeah.
So when you're determining the BPA, you want to be able to analyze all these Pokemon and see what they can actually do before you actually draft them and actually put them on your team. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with a mishmash of Pokemon that you really think are cool. Now that brings us to our next point, BPA fluidity, which I kind of hit on a little bit. Your best Pokemon available is going to change pick by pick. Like Matt was talking about earlier, we were looking at grass types. We were thinking maybe in the next couple rounds we pick up a grass type. We see that a few of the grass types that we were looking at immediately got taken. Well, now that puts grass typing above in our priority list because now we're looking for something that isn't going to get taken right away because of the scarcity of this particular Pokemon as the draft is moving on is starting to become less and less. So that might push you into going, oh, you know what? Everybody's taking A tiers in the second round. Okay, well, let's look at some of these A tiers because we need to make sure that we grab one of the good A tiers here. So because of that, your BPA is constantly fluid.
At the same time, that could also mean that if a lot of the good A tiers are getting snatched up, maybe you come back to A tier later if you're gonna get a mediocre A tier either way, and maybe that means you pick one of the top B tiers.
Yep. Which is something that we did in this last draft. We looked at the S tiers. We had a bunch of S tiers, but we would rather get the 3 best A tiers than 2 top 15 S tiers. That was a decision that we decided to make. So that can be something that you should also look at as well. Like he said, if you're noticing that these tiers are starting to go down and you're maybe 6, 7, 8 picks out, you go, you know what, man? I'm not willing to pick up the 12th or 13th best A tier. Let's see what these B tiers can offer us, and we'll come back to that later because the separation between 15 and 25 may be very small. So even if 15 through 20 get taken, 21 through 25 can be very similar in the amount of things that those other Pokemon can do. So.
But at the same time, it could also be the case that 12th or 13th best A tier is actually optimal for your particular team.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why we're saying that BPA is fluid. It can change depending on what's on the board. It changes depending on what you already have. It's something that you're gonna have to analyze for yourself. It's not just a matter of like well, this Pokemon is always better than this one, so that's the one that we should pick. If certain kinds of Pokemon are getting scarce, then it might be a good time to pick one up. If you really need a Tailwind user and all the Tailwind Pokemon are getting snatched up, maybe it's not a good idea to wait another round or two to take one.
Yeah. Another good example is we were talking about Excadrill. You take Excadrill with your top pick. That's a great pick. But Gigalith gets taken. Tyranitar gets taken. Well, now you're going, okay, we need to grab Hippowdon in this next one. We don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Because you want to have some type of sand user. Even if you're not going to run it in sand all the time, you want to at least have that threat in Team Preview with the Excadrill being able to be put in sand. So a lot of those things make it so that way BPA is constantly just fluid, and you need to constantly reevaluate and reanalyze why you're picking particular Pokemon. If you do these things, you're going to be much, much happier with the picks that you get. You're not going to feel like you're getting sniped. When you hear these teams go, oh, I didn't get sniped. Usually it's because they had some backups there that they're really, really, really comfortable using. So they're like, no, it's not that big of a deal, man. Like we were just as high on this one and this one. So when you're that prepared, you're gonna be much, much, much happier with your draft rather than if you choose a Pokemon and then five picks before you it gets taken and now you're scrambling. You have no idea what to choose and you rush and choose something that's suboptimal. It's not gonna help you.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty much it for best Pokemon available.
Yeah, it's also just courteous to have some backup picks so that you're, if your one thing gets taken, you're not spending like hours, holding up the draft. You have the time if you need it. That's why we have our 8-hour timer. But yeah, it's a nice thing to do for everybody else. It is also just considerate.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say too is making a list of these 5 Pokemon is probably the most important thing because it's something that's coming from your brain. Like I can't tell you which 5 Pokemon to choose.
Yeah.
So when you're doing this, be very open to what your partner is also suggesting because you need both these people to just both of you to, or all three of you in some cases, to come together and maybe one of you didn't think about something because there's so many Pokemon to consider, that just taking 5 is almost impossible. So you'll notice that if you work with your partner to try and bring up these 5 Pokemon that you're going to analyze, you're going to come up with some really good things. Just because it's two of you working together and you're working off of each other. So
Yeah.
that's the only thing I have left to say on best Pokemon available.
All right. Next, we are moving on to point budgets. So we're going to be talking about how to plan out your draft ahead of time and spend your points wisely, which is not necessarily something that we've seen everybody do in the past. We will talk about at least one specific example. All right. So budgeting as you go. Budgeting tends to become more important as the draft progresses. It's the first pick is really the only one where you probably don't really need to think about budgeting. I would say the only real exception to that is if you're maybe doing we talked about a late draft U tier pick. If you're planning on doing that, budgeting is important to start with because you need to leave room for that U tier, regardless of what it is. Whether you have a couple of different U tier options or but you want to leave some room for that. So whether your first pick is a U tier or an S tier or an A tier, it probably you don't really have to consider the entire structure of your draft when you're just making your first pick. Your second, third, and fourth picks are really what are going to determine the kind of draft structure you're going to end up having. And when I say draft structure, I'll get into specifically what that means in the next slide. We'll have some examples from last season of the breakdowns of how many Pokemon from each tier different teams had. But your second, third, and fourth picks are really going to determine the kind of draft structure that you're going to have. Whether maybe it's going to be more balanced or more top heavy, and especially if you're going more top heavy, if you pick like 2 S tiers and 2 A tiers, that's going to sort of lock you into a particular structure and sort of limit what you can pick from those lower tiers because you're spending so many points in the beginning. Picking a U tier can kind of do that, but it can be whether you're picking a U tier or a few S tiers, it's you can totally make a top heavy draft and still budget properly. We saw some top heavy drafts do very well last season. So we just want everybody to make sure that they are they're starting to become aware of their budget during their first few picks, especially by their third and fourth pick. It really needs to be one of the main things you're thinking about. What kind of draft do you want? What kind of what's the structure going to be? How many available slots from some of these lower tiers are you going to have? That kind of thing. So we don't want you to be the team that messes this up halfway through the draft. We don't want you to be the team that goes, oh man, well, we just spent a lot of our points. We don't have a whole lot left to spend on this other stuff. We might have to pick up some E tiers unexpectedly. Or even worse, you end up drafting something that you don't actually have the points to spend on, that you can't afford.
Take a penalty.
Yeah, we had that happen once last season with the Lava Ridge Raiders. They had enough points to purchase the Gardevoir, but that didn't leave them with enough points to actually draft a full draft of 10 Pokemon. They overspent on their budget, so we had to stop everything. We had to take Gardevoir off their draft, and we moved their final that pick to the end of the draft. So that is what's going to happen if that ends up being you. If you pick something that you cannot afford, you lose out on the pick that round, and that pick goes to the very end of the draft. So don't be that guy. Don't be that team. And then, like I said, top heavy versus balance. I think when we were analyzing everybody's drafts at the beginning of last season, I think we were probably a little harder on the top heavy drafts than we should have been. I think we kind of counted it as detrimental more than it actually was. Specifically because we saw so many top heavy drafts actually do really well. Top heavy does not mean a top heavy draft is not a bad draft. It can be, but it's not necessarily a bad draft. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you didn't budget properly. You can budget to pick some E tiers at the end. That's kind of what they're there for, for a more top heavy draft. But you should just be aware a little bit early on whether you're going more for balance or more for something a little bit more top heavy with something like 2 S tiers, or a U tier even.
That decision, people don't realize, is made so much sooner in the draft than it actually is. So many people start worrying about the draft in the 4th, 5th round, and like what Matt put here, you should understand what kind of draft you're going to have on your 2nd and 3rd picks, because your 1st pick is going to be in a vacuum. You're going to get the best Pokemon available. You're gonna pick it up regardless of the points. Now your 2nd pick, it starts putting you in 2nd and 3rd picks in particular. It's like, okay, are we gonna run a more balanced draft? Do we get an S tier here or do we get an A tier here? Because the difference between just those 2 tiers with your 2nd pick opens up so many things. Running 1 S tier instead of 2 opens up a completely different budget for your draft. So people need to understand that the budget is not something that gets taken into consideration in the 5th, 6th rounds, in the middle towards the end of the draft. No, you need to be on top of your budget right after your 1st pick. That's pretty much the only pick where you just don't need to worry about your budget at all. So that's really what we're hitting on here is make sure you're constantly looking at where you are at with your budget, because you do not want to be this team that we have to go back to the draft 3 spots because we just realized that you made an illegal move and now you're picking last, and we're going to laugh at you. We are. We're going to go, wow, didn't we talk about that in our video?
Yeah. Especially now that we mentioned it here. Yeah.
So don't be that team. Make sure you stick on your budget. Make sure you understand how many points you're spending every single round, because it really is going to matter a lot in the long run. So,
yeah. All right, and here are some good examples of draft structures from last season. These are all of our playoff teams here. So we're going to start from the more balanced ones at the top, moving down to kind of the top heavy ones at the bottom. Probably should have put the top heavy ones at the top, but yeah, too late now. Who cares? All right, so ours was clearly the most balanced draft. That alone doesn't mean it was the best. I mean, we think it was the best, but not just for that reason. The second place team had the most top heavy draft structure on this list. Yeah. So we had 4 A tiers, 5 B tiers, and a D tier. The 4 A tiers was mostly because we were following this rule of BPA, this best Pokemon available thing, because we were actually picking second to last, and we figured, basically all of the S tiers that we thought were worth picking up were gone by the time it got to us. We had some plans for picking up S tiers. None of them panned out, which was not super surprising to us. But all of the S tiers that we might have wanted were gone, so we figured, okay, let's just take the best A tiers instead, since we're not really getting what we want out of the S tier. and that opened up a lot more slots on our team for just really good solid Pokemon. Instead of having to pick up some of these trash mons at the end here, like just looking at E tier, like nobody wants to pick up a Magnemite or a Larvitar, or, so so yeah, the balance on our draft was actually ended up being really really nice. The next one down, we've got the Toronto Talonflames with one S tier, two A tiers, six B tiers, and a D tier. So, excuse me. So, they ended up trading compared to our draft. They ended up trading two A tiers instead for an S tier and a B tier. So still pretty balanced. They had one D tier at the end, like us, which is not a huge deal. Having one Pokemon that's mostly filler is kind of to be expected. I think basically everybody last season had at least one D or E. This one is probably this one and the next one, I think, Doesn't Click and the New England Patriots had one S tier, three A tiers, two B tiers, three C's, and one D. I think both of these single S tier drafts are probably, especially the second one with the two B's and three C's. Like, I think these are probably your classic balanced drafts with a mostly even spread across all of the tiers. Obviously, not really the case with the Talonflames. They loaded up on those B tiers instead of having an extra A tier with some C's. But yeah, I think this the structure that Doesn't Click and the Patriots went with, that's kind of your quintessential balanced single S tier draft.
Standard.
The most standard kind of thing that you're gonna see. And then we've got the more top heavy ones. The potatoes they actually went with a double S tier draft and didn't actually have to pick any E tiers, which is kind of cool. They sacrificed that still kind of on the top end by only having one A tier. They just had that lone Gigalith, the only thing from A tier that they had, and then they had three Bs, three Cs, and the one D tier. So this is more. This is really a good. Kind of a good middle ground between balance and top heaviness, because you still do have those two S tiers. If like you're not going to go for a completely balanced draft if you've got two S tiers, because of course you have some balance among the B's and C's, but because you took two S's, you only get one A tier, which is kind of unfortunate. But that's the price you pay for going for two S's. So this is this I think is a great example of a middle ground between the balance and the top heaviness. And then our last draft structure, which we saw from our finalists, the Sky Pillars, and the Mats, who made top four, and the seniors, who came in seventh. They are very very top heavy with two S tiers, two A tiers, and two B tiers. They loaded up basically all of their points on those six Pokemon that are probably going to be hitting the field most of the time. So this is the kind of draft where you're going to be bringing the same six almost every time. We did see the C's and the D's occasionally. We did see the Luxray and the Boltund come out a little bit from the Sky Pillars. I think we saw Vespiquen once from the Mats.
Score bunny.
You just got, that was the one time an E tier hit the field that it was
and picked up some KOs.
It did. But again, they were kind of memeing.
Yes,
so,
they were memeing. So yeah.
And then from the seniors, we actually saw Spritzy like at least twice.
Mm-hmm.
They did some good stuff with it, and so your lower tier Pokemon, if you have a top heavy draft like this, they can still do some work. They can still hit the field sometimes. Most of the time, the 6 that are going to be hitting the field, if you have this kind of a draft structure, are going to be your 2 A's, or your 2 S's, your 2 A's, and your 2 B's.
Yeah, I mean that just makes sense.
Yeah, obviously. So if you're looking for a draft structure to go with, any of these are perfectly viable. All of these teams did very well, and so obviously there's not there's really nothing wrong with going with something like this. Now, I did want to give a couple of sample U tier draft structures just because we last season U tier was pretty lackluster. Nobody really there were like 5 Pokemon to choose from. It was like Melmetal and Kyurem and a couple other things. Nobody really wanted them last time. We have a much more robust U tier now, so if you want to pick one of these up, these are maybe one of the better ways to do it. If you want a more top heavy U tier draft, if you really want to go for that, if you really want a U tier and an S tier, costs a lot of points, but you can do it. You're going to be sacrificing a little bit more on the bottom end. You can still pick up an A tier, and then if you want, you could probably drop. You could also probably drop the A tier and go for mix in some B's with your C's as well if you want to be a little bit less top heavy, but you can actually go for the U and the S and the A on the same draft. That's an option that you have. At that point, you're going to have to go for 5 C tiers, which maybe too many. It's not that great, which is why if you're going to go for this kind of structure, you might want to sacrifice the A tier for a couple of B tiers instead. And then on the bottom end, you're going to have that 1 D tier and 2 E tiers that, which is what we saw on some of these draft structures on the bottom here. So, and then for a more balanced U tier draft, you're going to have to forego that S tier pick, but you do have a U tier, so it's not necessarily such a bad thing. You can still pick up 2 A tiers, 2 B tiers. You're going to have 3 C tiers, and then fill out the rest of your draft with 2 of these D tiers as well. So that's a more balanced approach if you want to go for a U tier but still have some balance. You're going to have to sacrifice that S tier, but it should be expected. If you're going to pick a U tier, you have to sacrifice something somewhere.
That's why we suggested that U tier get picked last.
Yeah.
Because, like, for instance, you see that you're going to have to be really heavy on the C tiers. If you look through C tier, there's some good Pokemon in there, but you're going to want to have to get the first crack at them. Because once a lot of them start getting taken up, you're going to be left over with things that just aren't very optimal for your team. So that's why we suggest, if you're going to have a team with the U tier on it, you wanted to go for that top heavy one, you're going to need 5 C tiers. You're going to want to grab the 5 best C tiers that are going to fit your draft. Because it's slim pickings in there. And you're going to be relying on those C tiers a lot. So the U tier is going to be a U tier. It's going to have a huge BST. It's going to have an amazing move pool and a really strong ability. And it's going to be able to do all those things that you expect a U tier to do. But you're going to want to supplement those other parts in the draft early, so that way you can get the best of the best out of those tiers to complement your incredibly powered U tier Pokemon. So that's the main reason why we recommend doing that.
Yeah. Now, as far as top heaviness goes, the top heavy drafts are inevitably going to have a fair amount of D and E tier Pokemon filling out the bottom of the draft. So how top heavy is too top heavy? How many D's and E's are too many if you want to if that's the kind of draft that you're thinking of going for? We thought 5 too many. If you have 5 Pokemon that fit into the D and E tiers, you have too many. Your draft is too top heavy. Period. That means you only have 5 Pokemon from the higher tiers, which means you are forced into bringing a D or E tier into every battle. Which, maybe you can make it work sometimes, but it seems kind of suboptimal, and it seems your opponents are gonna have an easier. They're gonna be able to narrow down exactly what they're prepping for. They can for the most part ignore those bottom tier picks, and they can just hard prep for your 5 big Pokemon, and it's going to be easy to prep against you. It's going to be you're going to have to bring a suboptimal Pokemon to every game. It's 5 is too many. 4, I don't think we had any draft that had 4 DNEs last time. We still think this is probably too many. We only really think this is acceptable if you are a team that really knows what you're doing. We criticized some of the more top heavy drafts last time, and I think especially the mats. I mean, they only had let's see, yeah, it was just that the 2S, 2A, 2B, and a C, a D, and an E. Like we they are a team that could actually, they didn't have 4, they only had 3, but they're a team that could probably get away with this if they really wanted to. We're confident that they really know what they're doing enough to have 4. If they really have a solid squad of 6 high tier Pokemon that they want to bring to virtually every match, then I'm confident that a team like that could pull it off. It's still a little bit too top heavy for me, but I'd still be surprised if we saw this kind of a draft structure, especially since we haven't seen one before. So 3 3 is acceptable. 3 is the maximum that we saw from these the 3 teams down at the bottom, the Sky Pillars, Mats, and the Seniors. They had 3 from these bottom tiers, one D tier and 2 E tiers. This is still acceptable. We obviously saw teams have great success with this kind of a draft structure. You're probably okay doing this, but we probably wouldn't recommend going this top heavy for beginners or otherwise novice players. You don't have to, I don't think you have to be an expert at this stuff to go for 3, but you shouldn't be new to multi battles or drafting, and well, you could be new to multi battles, but if you're new to drafting, if you maybe don't have a ton of VGC experience or something like that, probably don't want to go with a draft that's top heavy enough to require 3 bottom tier Pokemon.
Yeah, agreed. So that's pretty much about it. Like we said, don't mess up point budgets. It's so basic.
Yeah.
You just have to stay on it. And that's really what it is. It's just vigilance. You have to make sure that you're constantly making sure that you're in budget.
Yeah.
And if you do, I guarantee you're gonna really like your team, because you're gonna feel that you got the best picks out of those particular tiers because you budgeted accordingly. All right.
Yep. All right, so that's it for point budgets. Our last section is on team building. Now, this isn't about team prep. It's about forming that cohesive and competent draft. This is how to form a solid squad of 10 Pokemon. And keep in mind, you do have to draft exactly 10, so don't overspend again. All right, so the team building basics really are that we've identified are your team's synergy, its threat level, and its versatility. When we're gonna be grading each individual draft and doing an analysis on the draft. I guess for those not aware, we're going to be interviewing as many teams as possible about their draft. We want to get as many teams in call as possible so that we can show you the kind of report card that we made for you guys and give you guys grades on your draft. We're gonna have 4 different pieces of criteria. One of them is how well you drafted, what your draft order looks like, and how well you spent your points, that kind of thing. The other 3 are going to be these team building components. They're going to be synergy, threat level, and versatility. So those are the things we're going to touch on here. So So starting off with synergy, these are just some of the basic things that we're looking for that you should be keeping in mind when it comes to synergy. Complementary typings is probably the most basic one. Pokemon that work well together based on their typings. A common cores that you're gonna see are like the classic Fire, Water, Grass core. The Dragon Steel Fairy core has been big ever since fairies were introduced back in Gen 6. Fighting Psychic Dark is a little bit of a lesser known core, but it is powerful. We've made use of that before. With especially with Mew as our psychic type, that was pretty good. But your typings, these are just some common things that you're going to want to look for. You don't have to have all of these cores on your team. If you want to get extra creative, you don't even necessarily have to have any of them. But it's if you don't have any of them, it's probably you probably did something wrong unless you really know what you're doing, because look, there are type combinations that work really well together that don't fit into any of this stuff. There's a combination that I used a lot in 2017 was Celesteela and Gastrodon. Those two, none of those two types fit together on any of these three cores, but they cover for each other's weaknesses perfectly. Gastrodon is immune to electric and resists fire, and Celesteela has a double resistance against grass. So you can still find stuff like that synergizes well without being part of one of these big cores. But you're probably going to end up wanting at least one of these cores on your team. It's almost definitely not feasible to have all of them, given that we only have a draft of 10 Pokemon. But if you can make one or two of them work really well, you're probably well on your way to having some good typing synergy. The next one down is common combinations. This is a lot of this comes down to abusing certain abilities. Weather is a big one here. Put very simply, if you have Politoed Kingdra, you've got a really solid rain mode. We saw Excadrill and Gigalith from the potatoes last time. We saw Kanto Ninetales and Gmax Venusaur from the mats. Weather, pretty straightforward. I think we all know what weather does. And then you've got other stuff like self-procking steam engine on Colossal, whether that's with priority Aqua Jet or a surf to get around redirection, or you could even flip turn into it and go into a redirector. And then we've got stuff like beat up Justified, like with Whimsicott, with either like Terrakion or Cobalion. Another one that's popped up recently with Crown Tundra is going to be that Regigigas Wheezing. So this is going to be a pretty it's again seems pretty basic, but common combinations are going to be important. They're not necessarily the only things that you want to go for, but we'll address that a little bit more when we get into synergy. And then finally we've got a big part of synergy is that you want your Pokemon to properly take advantage of the kind of support and especially speed control that some of your more utility-based Pokemon offer. A good example of this is the Duraludon Grimmsnarl that we had last season. We didn't run Grimmsnarl as a supportive Pokemon all the time, but when we did, stuff like Duraludon and even the Noivern were able to take advantage of the kind of support that Grimmsnarl had to offer really well. Duraludon especially, it had kind of a mediocre speed stat, so Grimmsnarl's Thunder Wave could allow it to move first when it otherwise couldn't. Screens are really nice because if a Dynamax Duraludon really wants to stick around, especially Light Screen, it helps that pitiful special defense stat a lot. The Fake Tears allows Duraludon to just blow stuff up all at once, just going for the priority -2 special defense. And then just having Pokemon that benefit from your speed control as well. Like this might seem pretty basic, but you don't want to have a bunch of slow Pokemon with a couple of Tailwind users, right? You don't want to have something like a Weavile next to a Trick Room setter, and additionally, you don't necessarily want to you don't want to take a super frail Pokemon and try to give it a lot of support through something like screens. You're not really trying to make again Weavile. It's a very frail Pokemon. You're probably not going to want to support Weavile with screens because it's kind of just going to get blown up anyway, especially if you're a frail Pokemon with a 4 times weakness like that. So making sure that your Pokemon benefit from the kind of support and the kind of speed control that you have is really important. And I think having redirection next to proper threats is important as well. Something that we sort of criticized the New England Patriots for last time was not really getting as much value as they could have out of their Clefable because we felt that their draft wasn't really offensive enough to justify it. They sort of they weren't putting out the damage that's required to justify using Follow Me and essentially sacrificing a slot just by having a Follow Me user that's meant to go down. So having proper threats next to redirection is important as well, which kind of leads into our threat level as well. You wanna take threat level for us?
So with threat level, we're looking for something that's a lot different than just like, oh, Haxorus has a base, what is it, 145 attack stat. That makes its threat level high. Like, no, we're talking about things that have to be taken into account in team preview by your opponents because that could potentially 6-0 them. Having a high attack stat or high special attack stat doesn't necessarily add to your threat level, but having something like Colossal next to Dragapult does. Because it's a combo that needs to be respected and can absolutely fly through any teams that are unprepared for it. So when we look at threat level in general, it is not necessarily just, like we said, stats or access to Swords Dance or things like that. It's how easy is it to roll somebody. Because there are particular modes, there are particular Pokemon that it's very, very easy for them to just start rolling. Glastrier is a great example of that. A Pokemon that just needs Trick Room, 1 KO.
Doesn't even need it.
Yeah, it doesn't even need it.
It wants it, but...
But if it gets Trick Room,
yeah.
It gets 1 KO with its amazing coverage and incredibly high attack stat, gets a +1 boost, and now all of a sudden you're staring down this incredibly powerful Pokemon that is just going to keep getting stronger and stronger and stronger.
And you're afraid to hit it because you don't know if it has weakness policy.
Yes. So things like that really kind of add to the threat level rather than just having high base stat in a particular offensive stat. So when you're...
I also want to clarify that threat level doesn't just mean sweeping potential and offense.
True.
There are other kinds of win conditions. I'll use an example that I actually saw in Battle Stadium recently. I went up against a team that had a really bulky Iron Defense Ferrothorn with a Perish Song Lapras. The Ferrothorn just stayed on the field, bulked it out the whole game, and their win condition ended up being Perish Song with Ferrothorn, a super slow base 20 on the field, so that it was the last thing to faint. Or even if you feel that you can bulk it out with something like a Ferrothorn or a Celesteela and just Leech Seed stall, and if you feel confident enough that you can leave it on the field and get that done before the timer runs out, that can be a really threatening win condition as well. It's not just about offense.
Yes, our favorite one that isn't about offense at all that was used in NBL last year was how the Sky Pillars used Milotic. Milotic was an incredibly threatening win condition. It wasn't knocking anything out, but it was coiling up, had recover, it had hypnosis, and could absolutely just stop any game plan that you had right in its tracks just by getting a coil and a hypnosis off. They were making it extremely bulky to where it was surviving stuff that, quite frankly, it probably shouldn't have survived.
Oh
But
God, yeah,
it
yeah.
they just that's the kind of thing when we think about threat level is a variety of win condition, the sweeping potential, all those things. Perish Song, another really threatening mode that you have that can absolutely win you games. So yes, threat level isn't just about sweeping or KO potential, but ultimately about having a wide variety of win conditions at your disposal that your opponent needs to constantly check for. That brings your threat level up high. So definitely, looking at that, like we said, Pokemon that demand attention from your opponents. Your opponent, like when we prepped for the Sky Pillars, we immediately knew that we had to handle the Milotic because it could very easily just put a stop to our plans, revert the momentum back in their direction, and now all of a sudden our backs are against the wall because we allowed this Milotic to just get a couple of moves off. You know, so these are definitely things that you need to look at. And the reason why threat level is so high is because, and like we put in this last point, synergy and versatility aren't really enough to win in this league. We have a 20-minute timer with 6 Pokemon when two teammates need to coordinate their attacks and think about a variety of different moves. This isn't just VGC where you yourself can press buttons faster to get the timer to slow down a little bit. You still need to talk to your partner. You still need to think things through. And because of that, the timer is such an important aspect to multi-battle. None of us like it. We all would like to get rid of it, but it's still a legitimate win condition that you have to account for. So one of the things that we saw is with the Patrats last year, we loved their draft. We loved it. We thought it was fantastic. It was incredibly balanced. They had several different modes, but we graded them very hard on threat level because it would seem like a very passive team. And the reason why is we felt that winning on timer defensively is an inconsistent strategy. It's just you're gonna win some, you're gonna lose some, and in a situation like last season where the playoffs were best of one, you cannot have inconsistency like that in your draft because all it takes is just one time and it's over. So a lot of their games went to time, and they came out winning about I think 60%, right? I think they probably went to time on 5 of their games.
Yeah,
they won 3 and lost 2.
I think they were 6-3 going into playoffs, and then the Mats beat them in top 8.
Yeah,
So.
and did they beat them on time?
I don't think so. I think it was close.
Yeah. So this is what we're saying is that
But we beat them on time.
we beat them on time, yeah, and that's what we're saying is that you need to have something to. It's much better to just take a lead and hold it than try and claw your way back defensively with this. And that's actually where the Patriots were getting a lot of their wins was when they were taking a lead and holding the lead. And that's when they were properly utilizing their threat level. But because their threats weren't that much or didn't have that many that could be prepped for, they were consistently finding themselves to where they couldn't grab the lead right away. So great players, though. They did a fantastic job last year. They've consistently made the playoffs every single year that they've been in. So, don't let us tell you that, you need threat level. But that's a good example of, even though you have synergy and versatility up the yin-yang, you still need this threat level because it is that important.
Yeah. All right, and the last and maybe arguably most important aspect of team building in a draft format is going to be your versatility. So versatility essentially comes down to maximizing your game plan options and maximizing your ability to adapt to the greatest amount of matchups. You want to. This is something that Fiona stressed when I spoke with her a little bit. You really want to have as many options for your team as possible, so that you don't run into so that you minimize the number of matchups that you can't really do anything against. You want to be able to have options against virtually everything, which is hard. It's hard to do that in a draft setting. It's hard to do that in VGC. it's one of the most difficult things when it comes to team building in Pokemon is making sure you have a good matchup against everything. But if you can do it right, that it might be the most important thing. Um, Especially in a draft format, which, if you have a squad of 10 that has matchups against, that has, at least decent matchups against everything, it makes prepping a lot easier every week. Um, this is something that we really benefited from last this past season with the insane versatility that we had with our draft. There were just so many things in our draft that could go so many different ways, and it I don't think there was ever a time where we sat down and thought like we don't have options against this. I think the closest we got to that was in top four when we were going up against the Mats, with that Sun mode and the Incineroar, that whole thing. But we still the mons that we picked still had what it took to cover all of our options and actually do everything that we wanted them to do, even though it took a long time for us to really figure out how to do it. We still did it, and we still had we still had a good enough variety of options against everything that we played against.
Yeah. I think a good thing to kind of hit on too a little bit is that I felt that when we were prepping stuff, having this type of team that's so versatile, it felt almost like a puzzle, right? And what I mean by that is we knew that we could complete the puzzle. We had the necessary pieces. It just was a matter of time on how long it was going to take for us to complete the puzzle. There are some teams where you're missing a couple of pieces. You're not going to beat that puzzle. Or you're not going to beat your opponent with what you have. So maximizing and making sure that you have as many pieces. When we were, I think our one loss was against, it was definitely against Team Pussy, Yue and Sebi. And one thing that I told Matt after the match was it was the first time after prep where I felt like we hadn't really completed the puzzle. We halfway did it, and we were just like, we think it's good enough, and it wasn't, and we got beat from it. But every other week, we left the prep going, we completed this. We did it. We have something good here. And being able to draft very versatile Pokemon was a very, very key contributor to allow us to do that. Because if we had such linear Pokemon all the time, we wouldn't have those options. We just wouldn't.
Yeah. You want to take the next couple of points?
Sure. The next two are variety and win conditions. So making sure that you're not just trying to KO everything right off the bat. That works, but like we were talking about before, stuff like Corviknight, stuff like Perish Song with a very bulky, slow Pokemon, things, like the Milotic. These are different win conditions than what you typically think, like Porygon Z. Redirect, blow it up with Max Strike. So yes, you need to have a very different amount of win conditions. And the reason why we put Porygon Z and Corviknight up particularly is because the Sadistic Seniors use these two to absolute perfection. They used the Porygon Z when they did max it, because sometimes they didn't, to kind of wipe out all the threats to the Corviknight, and then brought the Corviknight into the back and just let that win just let that be their win condition. They had a good win against the Russians when they were basically about to lose, brought in the Corviknight and forced the Russians to make some very critical choices that ultimately lost them the game. And, you saw it with us a couple of times where a mid to late game Trick Room was incredibly valuable because that was another win condition that we had in our back pocket. So having to make sure that you can switch your win condition mid-match and having multiple win conditions on your team can really, really, really help your versatility level when we're grading these things.
Yeah, it also just it makes it more difficult for your opponents to prep for your team when you have this variety in your win conditions. When somebody's prepping against the seniors team from this past season, they can't just be like, oh well, we gotta stop them from sweeping and then we're good. Well, no, you also have to stop the Corviknight from setting up iron defenses or something like that, and just bulking it out and running through you, and just not dying. So you can't just stop the Dynamax Porygon and call it good. You might need to add some extra tech moves like a haze or something on it to make it more, to make something like that more manageable. And for our team, you can't just you can't just beat the Duraludon Grimmsnarl or beat whatever Pokemon we're setting up with and then call it good, because a lot of the time we brought a Trick Room mode in the back. So you need to be able to handle both of those things with the team that you're bringing. Variety in your win conditions is very important.
Yeah. And then with role switching, we used ourselves as the example on here. Pokemon that can do so many different things that it makes your opponent hard to guess which one you're going to go with on a week-to-week basis. One of the particular examples was Blastoise Volcarona. We loved that combination because, in theory, when it's out on the field, you have to make a decision on what you think is going to set up. Is the Blastoise going to redirect and the Volcarona is going to go for a Quiver Dance? Or is the Volcarona going to go for a Rage Powder and then we get a Shell Smash off? So these are all things that put you in a very, very difficult predicament. Especially because a couple of times, we would have Blastoise with Shell Smash and have Blastoise in the first slot. So you're probably thinking, well, they're going to go for a Quiver Dance and then they can max the Volcarona next turn. And what we're thinking is, well, if they lead Fake Out, we can double protect, Shell Smash next turn, and then get it up, and then we have it. So it's one of those things where, like, we can play so many mind games and make our opponent think that we're going to bring A when we decide to actually bring B. Being able to switch roles is huge. Grimmsnarl, obviously, to a not really a lesser extent. I don't want to say that. But
probably a greater extent, honestly,
because of how much it caught people off guard.
Oh yeah, like when you find a Pokemon that like people think they know, and you're aware that you can do something else with it, and that's something else it actually does well. You can catch people off guard, and sometimes you just have that extra option. Mm-hmm. It's probably not enough just to catch them off guard, but like. When we brought the offensive Grimmsnarl, especially when we maxed it, it was the right decision every time. It's not just like we thought like, oh well, this will catch him off guard. It did, and that probably helped, but it was also just another option that turned out to be really good. Frankly, more often than we thought. Yeah. And when you find something like that, something like an offensive Grimmsnarl that people really just don't expect. I mean, it got to the point where like we had maxed it. We'd shown us maxing it before, and still like even when we played against Ben and Vichy, they were like they're maxing the Grimmsnarl. Really, it's like,
and we had already maxed it like 3 times the year.
Well, I think we'd only maxed it once by that point, but still, we'd done it before.
We did it with LA New Wave, and then we did it with Steve and Googe before.
No, New Wave was after.
Oh, was it after? Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I mean...
But still, we've done it before.
We've done it before. That's the point. So, yes, being able to have Pokemon that can switch roles will greatly, greatly add to your versatility grade, because it helps so much not only when you're prepping, but also when people are prepping against you, because they just don't know what's going to come out, especially if you show that you're willing to consistently bring a different mode, because... We brought supportive Grimmsnarl in finals, know? So,
yeah,
with fake tears and all that stuff that you normally see on it. So it's one of those things where we made them prep for that too. Do you want to take the?
Yeah. So next we have just some like these are just some basics in what you want to look for in not only in a versatile Pokemon, but in a versatile squad. A lot of this stuff was stressed by Yiwei when he was giving his input on our draft guide here. Wide move pools. Some of this stuff seems kind of obvious, but I think it's important to address anyway. Wide move pools is incredibly important. Having good variety and type coverage, whether I don't want to sound like a broken record, but going back to Grimmsnarl again, its move pool was so wide and had so many different options. It had a lot of different coverage moves. It gets all the elemental punches, and it gets fighting coverage and stomping tantrum and power whip, and some of that stuff we didn't use, but it was always an option that we had at our disposal if we needed it. And then of course, since it had the option to go for a supportive prankster set, it's got a really wide move pool of stuff that it can do with that kind of mode. So and then something like Blastoise just has an incredible amount of supportive options. It's got Fake Out, Follow Me, Helping Hand, Icy Wind, Yawn, Flip Turn. There's a few more things that I'm forgetting, but it's just having a lot of options. Just it opens you up to better matchups across the board. Oh, Mist. We used Mist on Blastoise in top 4.
Almost clicked it too.
We almost did.
Clicked it.
So yeah, just having more options like that, it's it might sound obvious, but it's going to give you a higher. It's going to give you a greater amount of good or at least decent matchups. Also, having both a good split between physical and special attackers is good. We sort of felt that our team was this last season, it was maybe a little bit heavy on the special attackers, and we were often kind of weak to snarl spam, which frankly is why we had missed in top 4. But so you want to you don't want to be especially weak to damage mitigation of one type or another. You do want a good variety. You don't want your whole team getting shut down by Light Screen and Snarl. You don't want your whole team getting shut down by Intimidate and Reflect. So having good variety there between physical and special is good. And Yue also mentioned something interesting, which or that I thought was interesting, which is that you want to look for Pokemon that are kind of splashable. Pokemon that you can. He described these as Pokemon that you can kind of just fit on any team if you're team building and you're wondering kind of what to put in that last slot. You want to look for something that's just good across the board. Maybe has a good typing generally, few weaknesses, good stats across the board. Something that's really solid. The examples that he gave were Rotom and Corviknight. I think those are great examples of splashable Pokemon. You can kind of just throw that into any matchup, and even if it has a bad matchup against a few Pokemon, it's not going to have a bad matchup against everything. Largely because they have good stats and just really solid typings with not a whole lot of weaknesses. Yeah, most of the Pokemon that you can count as like especially splashable, I would say you're probably gonna find in like the A tier, because your S, which you're probably gonna end up bringing them to a lot of matches anyway. But like your S tier Pokemon are gonna come to virtually every match. Yeah. So they're not the kind of Pokemon that are going to be sitting on the bench while you're wondering what else to put on your team, right? So most of these splashable kind of Pokemon are going to be found like in the A tier. Some B tier Pokemon you could argue are splashable as well. So I think those are just some basics of looking for versatile Pokemon and building a versatile squad. This last point here is kind of relates to threat level a little bit. These are some things that both Ryan and Fiona from Dozen Clicks stressed when I spoke with them. They both said that straightforward strategies, kind of like the ones that I guess it relates to synergy as well. This common combos point up on synergy. If you're relying on a lot of this stuff, you're probably going to become fairly predictable. If your draft has like a weather mode and a steam engine mode, and you have like Wheezing Regigigas, something like that, your opponents are going to know what kinds of things to prep for exactly. If you have something a little bit more versatile, like our cast of A tiers, like the Duraludon, Grimmsnarl, Blastoise, Volcarona, that combination of 4 Pokemon can do so many different things, and it's going to be a lot harder to put to actually prep for all of them. Whereas if you're looking at a Dragapult Colossal, you know exactly what that's going to do, right? So it's going to give you fewer options to prep against your opponents, and it's going to give your opponents an opportunity to counter exactly what you want to do. That's not to say that you shouldn't have these strategies on your team,
No.
but you shouldn't pigeonhole yourself. Like if you want to have one or two like big combos or obvious pairs or something like that, it's like that's totally fine, and you're probably going to do well with them. You know, stuff like Dragapult Colossal is very powerful. But you want to make sure that you're not just relying on that stuff. So you know, if you're even if you have really good synergy, versatility can often be more valuable than that more linear stuff, even if it's really powerful, really synergistic. Anything else on versatility?
I mean, I pretty much think that's more or less what you need. Is you need to be able to swap in and out certain strategies. You can't rely on so many different things to try and beat your opponent on a week to week basis. You have to come up with a different strategy every time because you want to keep your opponents on their back foot, and you want to put yourself in the most advantageous position possible. And versatility really helps a lot with that. So I think that more or less clears it.
Yeah, I think that I don't know if one of these one of these three components of team building is necessarily more important than the others. But if I really had to pick one, I would say versatility is probably at the top of the list. But it's also the most difficult to really get right.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that about does it. We've got a few final thoughts here. Do you want to start us off?
Yeah, coming up on 2 hours here, but I think we did
Yeah.
did a decent amount here. The first one is, man, honestly, communicate with your partner, keep an open mind, and challenge each other's ideas. And what I mean by this is that does not mean that if your partner brings you a Pokemon that you don't really know about, you just immediately shut it down. You tell them, okay, well, sell it to me. Tell me what this does. Tell me why we need it. Because a lot of the times, and I get like this as well, I'm very stream of consciousness. So I'll mention something to Matt, and Matt will go, okay, well, explain to me exactly why you want it. And as I'm trying to explain it to him, I realize that there's a lot more holes than what I initially thought because Matt is allowing me to flesh this out a little bit more. He did the same thing with Pincurchin. He brought Pincurchin to me and was like, all right, what do you think about it? And I mean, he was like, Matt, come on. But that's not how you should be as a teammate. So I sat down, I listened to Matt. Matt made his pitch to me, and I ultimately agreed that yes, Pincurchin was going to be a valuable asset on the team.
Right. You have to challenge your teammates' ideas, but don't just challenge them and tell them that they're bad just for the sake of doing that. You don't want to be a dick about it. You gotta you have to challenge them in good faith, and if they make a good argument and their ideas hold up to severe scrutiny, then you should probably and you're gonna have to determine what holding up to severe scrutiny means to you.
Yeah.
But if that standard is met to you, you should probably back down and start to actually consider that as a serious idea. You should put that on the table as one of the things you might want to pick. And this even goes for team building week to week as well. So
You're a team.
yeah, don't just lay down and let your partner do everything, but also don't just say no to all of their ideas because they're not yours.
Yeah.
You want to hear them out in good faith, seriously keep an open mind, and challenge each other. This goes both ways.
This is why we recommend that when you find your partner, it's somebody that you're very comfortable with.
Yeah.
Because it can be very awkward to do that with somebody and challenge them if you don't really know them that well. But it is necessary because you don't want somebody to make the decisions. You have a bad feeling about some of the decisions that are being made, and your draft end up looking very bad because you just let them do whatever they want, and vice versa. You just felt, oh, I know what I'm doing here. He's not really saying anything. He or she's not really saying anything. So I'm just gonna make the decisions here. Well, now because you didn't take your partner's input, that the draft may not look as good as it is. So take advantage of the fact that you have two people. Build off of each other. Challenge each other. Do these things. You're a team. You need to be able to at least understand where the other person is coming from and what their objective is when they're trying to build this team. and you guys need to have a singular objective and be on the same page as much as possible.
Yeah. Our one of our other final thoughts is just again, this might seem kind of obvious because we're dealing with so many Pokemon that we don't normally see in regular play. But familiarize yourself with lesser used Pokemon. Make sure that you know what a lot of these lower tier Pokemon do down in the B and especially the C tier. B tier is full of well, not full of, but some of these Pokemon you're still gonna see it on ladder. But you might not be familiar with all of them. The C tier Pokemon, you really might not be familiar with them, especially if they're not fully evolved. So, I don't think anybody expects you to know off the bat like what the stats of everything is, or what all the moves are for all of these lesser used Pokemon. But get onto that Cerebi page, go to Showdown to make sure you're not missing any weird event moves. Cerebi also has an event Pokedex that you can look through if you're wondering about special moves that certain Pokemon get. So use those resources to really familiarize yourself with Pokemon that you don't normally see, and to also explore extra options for Pokemon that you do normally see. Again, Grimmsnarl. We've talked about it a lot. We don't really need to repeat ourselves, but it's a Pokemon that had good modes that don't get used in VGC, and people didn't expect it. So make sure you're making yourself aware of stuff like that.
One of the last major ones too is this is a good league, and what I mean by that is we have very good players in it. So when you're prepping, you should assume that your opponent is going to prep the most optimally and play the most optimally. So many times we saw in our team preview when we were prepping for stuff, going, this is their best lead. We need to prep for this lead because if they're smart, they're gonna go for this lead. Like, this is a really good lead. And so many times that happened.
Yeah.
We didn't get them all, of course, but we assumed that our opponent was going to play out of their mind to try and beat us, and we needed to come up with every single strategy that was viable and at least come up with a solid or soft game. A lot of our game plans were, well, what if they lead this? Well, then we double switch out, because that's what you have to do a lot of the times.
Yeah.
Is you have to have like, okay, yeah, well, this lead that we have here beats 80% of what they have, but just in case they bring this particular mode, we have a game plan for that too.
Yeah, you can't just think, well, we're leading with this thing. If they lead with this weird combo, then that really puts us in a bad spot. But maybe they're not such a great team. They're not going to do that. So you just don't prep for it. Don't do that. Prep for that weird lead. I don't care if you're going up against a team that's like 0-6. Prep for that lead. Assume that they're going to play optimally, because even if they don't play optimally, that's still going to give you the best chance of winning.
Yeah.
And if you're just sort of tossing out certain options that they could be using, because you don't think that they're good enough to bring them out, that could bite you in the ass, because they could bring that out, and it might not end well for you. So, in other words, just don't underestimate any of your opponents.
Yeah.
Prep and play like they're going to prep and play optimally.
Yeah. And the last one is just good luck and have fun. Look, this league can be very stressful. We've talked with a lot of other people. When you're building, we've done it before, where we're just really hitting our head against the wall and we can't get anything. It's very stressful. It's supposed to be fun. Take a break. Come back to it later. Don't worry too much. We're all in it to have fun. We want the bragging rights. We love the fact we have bragging rights this year. It's one of the best things about this year. But ultimately, don't do this if you're not having fun with it. Make sure that it's not a chore. Enjoy your experience in this league. It's a great time, great people in it. Just have a good time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Just good luck and happy drafting, everybody.
Yep. All right. Well, that does it from us. We're your reigning champion, Amoonguss Burnouts, and we will see you in the draft. Get ready for our team.
Peace, guys.